The sky looked calm that morning, but what happened above the clouds would become one of the strangest mysteries in aviation history. A plane full of passengers, 121 lives on board, yet after takeoff. Silence at 34,000 feet. No one spoke, no one moved, and no one even knew what was happening. This is the chilling story of the ghost plane. On August 14, 2005, a Helios Airways flight took off from Larnaca, Cyprus, heading towards Prague with a stop in Athens. It was a beautiful summer morning. Families, children, tourists all excited for their journeys. The plane, a Boeing 737, climbed smoothly into the sky. Nothing seemed wrong, but hidden deep inside, a silent killer was waiting. Minutes after takeoff, the crew began to notice strange warning signals. In the cockpit, alarms started beeping. Oxygen issues, pressurization problems. Captain Hans, Jurgen Merton and First Officer Pampos Charalambos tried to make sense of the warnings. But the signals were confusing, almost misleading, and here lies the tragedy. A small technical detail, a simple switch left in the wrong position, would decide the fate of everyone on board. The pressurization system, which keeps the cabin filled with breathable air, had been left on manual mode instead of auto. Slowly, silently, the oxygen levels inside the cabin dropped. At first, no one realized. The human brain doesn't immediately sense lack of oxygen. Instead, it tricks you. You feel lightheaded, a little dizzy, maybe even happy. This is called hypoxia. It steals away your strength and consciousness without warning. As the plane climbed higher, passengers began to lose awareness. Parents holding their children started to drift off. Laughter faded into silence. The cabin crew themselves became weak, unable to respond. One by one, 115 passengers slipped into unconsciousness. The pilots fought to understand the alarms, but they too were running out of oxygen. Their hands trembled, their minds clouded, until finally, silence filled the cockpit. The aircraft, however, kept flying on autopilot. A fully loaded Boeing 737 carrying 121 people soared across the Greek sky with no one in control. For air traffic controllers in Athens, it was a nightmare. They tried calling the flight over and over, but the radio was quiet. All they could see on their radar was a plane cruising normally, but inside, everyone was already unconscious. As the minutes turned to hours, the Greek Air Force was scrambled. 2 fighter jets raced towards the silent Boeing. The pilots looked through their cockpit windows, and what they saw shocked them to their core. Oxygen masks dangled from the ceiling. Passengers sat motionless in their seats. Children slumped beside their parents. No one moved, no one reacted. It was like staring into a flying tomb. But then something strange happened. One man was moving. A flight attendant, 25-year-old Andreas Prodromou, had somehow managed to stay conscious longer than others by using a portable oxygen bottle. When the fighter jets approached, Andreas was seen inside the cockpit, desperately trying to control the plane. Imagine his courage alone, half-conscious, fighting against fate, surrounded by silence. He waved at the fighter pilots, showing he was alive. For a brief moment there was hope. Andreas tried to take control, but it was too late. The fuel tanks were running dry. After almost 2 hours of ghostly flight, one engine flamed out, then the other. The massive Boeing 737 began its final descent. At 12:04 p.m., the ghost plane slammed into a hillside near Grammatiko, Greece. The impact shook the land. A ball of fire rose into the air. And in that instant, 121 lives were lost. The investigation that followed uncovered the shocking truth. A small error, a switch left in manual mode after maintenance, and the failure of the crew to recognize the pressurization warnings led to disaster. The alarms they heard were similar to other cockpit warnings, confusing them in those final moments. It was a chain of human mistakes, technical design flaws, and cruel fate. What makes this tragedy so haunting is the silence. For hours, a plane flew high above, a perfect machine in the sky, yet everyone inside was already gone. Families waiting at the airport had no idea that the people they loved were already lifeless long before the crash. It was not just an accident, it was a slow and invisible killer hypoxia, stealing breath and life without pain, without noise, without warning. The story of Helios Flight 522 reminds us of how fragile human life is against the vast power of the skies. One missed detail, one overlooked system, and an entire aircraft becomes a flying coffin. Aviation changed after this. Safety checks were made stricter. Training about hypoxia and pressurization alarms became more intense. But for the families of those 121 souls, the pain never left. Every tragedy leaves behind not just broken aircraft metal, but broken hearts. Imagine the mother who waved goodbye at the airport, never knowing it was the last time. Imagine the father waiting in Prague for his family to arrive, only to receive the news that no one survived. The silence inside that plane was not just the silence of hypoxia, it was the silence of dreams cut short, lives unfinished, and stories never told. The ghost plane will forever remain one of aviation's darkest mysteries, not because we don't know what happened, but because of how it happened. A plane flying for hours, passengers asleep forever, while the world below went on, unaware of the silent tragedy above their heads. And in the end, one question lingers: how fragile is the line between life and death, between laughter and silence? That morning at 34,000 feet, 121 people crossed that line, not with screams but with silence, and perhaps that is the most haunting part of all.